Welcome to Distribution Talk with Jason Bader, the show where we dive into the stories, struggles, and solutions from business owners and thought leaders in the wholesale distribution market. In this episode, I had the opportunity to catch up with Ankit Sharma, president of Kitply Industries. Kitply is a wood products distribution company based just outside of Vancouver, BC. Ankit is one of those amazing entrepreneurs that developed his vision at a very young age, and I was privileged to get to work with him at the beginning of his organization. It was a pleasure to speak with him, and I hope you enjoy our conversation. This episode of Distribution Talk is sponsored by InSQL Distribution Software. InSQL is a fully functional distribution-based software package. I say distribution-based because that's important. Many alternatives out there say they do distribution, but they really aren't very good at it. They're generally watered-down manufacturing packages with a few distribution features tacked on. I only recommend software packages that were purpose-built to serve distribution, and these folks do it very well at a price point many smaller distributors can afford. If you're ready to step up to a fully loaded, scalable distribution package at an affordable price, look no further than InSQL Distribution Software at www.insql.com. That's INXSQL.com. All right, Ankit. Hey, welcome to Distribution Talk. Great to see you as always.
Thank you for having me, Jason. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited for this new channel and look forward to being with you.
Perfect, man. I've wanted to speak with you on this for a while. You and I've got a long history here, and I've kind of seen you from the beginning. But for our audience who hasn't had the opportunity to meet you, take me back to how you got started in distribution. How did Kitply get going? I mean, if you can share that story, what really happened there?
Absolutely. I mean, this is going back almost 10 years now. I was working for a company that sold lumber in this space. So I learned the business from them, but I knew for a fact that I was never going to go into the same business as them. Even though I had this entrepreneurial drive, I somehow had a vision that I will not go into the wood products distribution at that age. So I tried a few different things when I left from there, and turned out that none of those worked. And so I reached out to some of my existing customers in the previous business and found a niche that I could tap into. And what I said I would never do, I started doing. And, one thing leads to the other, and all of a sudden you've got a business that you've got employees and payroll and payables and staff when you started with no money at all. And so you're just, every day is a journey of gratefulness. And I had left cold turkey, my previous job. So I had no other way but to swim when I got thrown in the deep. So I am grateful for where I've come, but it was not by design. It was not like I grew up and said, hey, I'm going to go into distribution. It was, in fact, the opposite of that.
Yeah, that's funny. And when you and I met, you had just leased this massive warehouse with a massive payment associated with that. And I mean, those were challenging times.
Absolutely. And I don't know if the challenging times ever change. I think the challenging is always there. The challenging piece is just changes what the challenges are. So I feel like all times are challenging. It's how you show up for them. It was definitely difficult being in that big space. We were subleasing some small amounts of space from other people before, and all of a sudden we had this giant space that was ours by ourselves. And it was at a time when the economy was still not recovered from the Great Recession. So it was a big step that we decided to take, and I'm really fortunate that it had worked out for us. It could have totally gone the other way as well.
Oh, definitely. I mean, early days, there was only a few of you there, but you started to do little things that changed it. You invested in the little showroom. I remember that was kind of a big step for you, that you wanted people to come in and take a look at what you had going.
Yeah, I think one thing I always believed in, if you got to act like a king or a queen to be treated like one. So one thing we did was we wanted to be seen as an important distributor and not be just a new guy on the block. So even though we were the new guy on the block, but we wanted our customers to know that we were in this for the long haul, and we wanted to invest in it for the future and not just take a quick buck and go home with it. So we invested in almost everything we made always back into the business.
Yeah, I can recall. And speaking of investments, there was pretty substantial investments in technology as well. This was a big deal, for a company your size. What was the first big ones that you really kind of started and said, you know what, those are the things I need to invest in, or else this thing is not going to fly?
Yeah, I mean, number one was people. So always knew that I didn't want to build a business that was only me. I wanted to make sure that it was an entity that would function without me, that didn't have me as a centerpiece. And if I were to be run over by a bus, then the business would cease to exist. So that was one piece. So people, number one. Number two, the systems and the processes, investing in making sure that the processes aren't dependent just on the people. You could bring in somebody else. If someone were to leave, the next person could come in and take over that. And IT was a part of that. It brought us some discipline and some information that we could now use to make better decisions in how we were purchasing or selling or looking at our margins. So I would say we were definitely ahead of our time in terms of the size of our company and the vision of where we would have to be. So it's you got to invest now for the future. And that's the opinion I felt that I always had about the business is that if I want to be big, then I got to do all the things that big companies do now so we can be big.
Yeah. And actually, I think one of the more interesting things that I recall was that you took advantage of some of the Canadian government offerings, and not a lot of people understand what is available to an entrepreneur. And you really embraced that. You said, hey, wait a minute. These folks are willing to invest in my company. Why am I not doing this?
I think when you have nothing, you have resourcefulness. And with that, you can get anything really. So we knew we wanted to do these things and when we didn't have the money for them. So we're like, okay, well, that doesn't mean that we're not going to do them. Now we have to figure out how we're going to do that. So every time we have a challenge, I feel the approach that we take is, okay, that's good. So now that's a problem. And now what are we going to do about it? The answer is not, no, we're not going to do it because we don't have the resources for it. It's how are we going to get those resources? What does it take? And the government was a fantastic partner in helping us launch both the purchase, the install, and the maintenance and development of our ERP and our IT system. And you were an excellent support in that. You were a coach that worked with us at the time that really helped us get going on that.
Yeah, I loved that whole process and going through that. And frankly, you were the only guy I knew that had really taken advantage of some of these programs. But as you said, if you don't have anything, you got to go get it out there. And again, I think that's really the heart of the entrepreneur. It's I'm not going to fail and I don't have anywhere else to go. What am I going to do if this doesn't work?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when they have money or they start with money or they raise a lot of money, what happens when you have a lot of money and you have a business to run? What's the first thing that comes to your mind? What are you going to do with this money? Spend it, right?
Right.
And if you don't have it, then you have no choice but to go look for alternative resources. And so government grants are a great resource for that purpose. You can go out there and get them in this free money that's available to everybody that people should be taking advantage of. But because they already have their own money, they don't think about it sometimes, or they don't realize that they should be looking at it.
Right. I think they've got the blinders on that, a bank is the only traditional place or family members or things like that, whereas there are other resources out there that you really could be taking advantage of.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So one of the other things is I noticed that you've been blogging a lot and doing, there's some blogs and stuff on your site, and you've got a webinar series. I think with Dom, you're working with Dom on this webinar series. Tell me a little bit about that. Some of these, kind of non-traditional marketing methodologies.
Yeah, one of the things I realized is as a small company, we have to punch above our weight, not only just to attract customers, but also to attract talented people to work for us. And it's hard enough being in the woodworking industry that there isn't a lot of young, smart people, going to Ivy League universities and saying, I'm going to go work in woodworking distribution. They're thinking apples or, marketing high-end tech companies. They're not thinking wood products. So how do we find and attract these young, talented people to us? So one thing we have to do is make the industry seem an attractive option. So one of my goals is to make wood sexy. And I actually write a blog called Make Wood Sexy, makewoodsexy.com. So a few things I talk about is how woodworkers can connect with people in universities and high schools and attract them to the industry, because there is something inherent about wood products that mankind has been working with wood for a long time. And I honestly believe that wood is a much better resource for the environment. It's a naturally renewing carbon sink as opposed to plastics or metals, which they have their obvious shortfalls. And there's a big movement already right now. There's tall structures being built out of wood, out of CLT, so cross-laminated timber. So wood is making a comeback for what it really really is and it should be. And so I want to be that one piece of the puzzle, the one more node that supports its development. And these non-traditional methods allow me to attract young people to work for us. And then our industry participants, both customers and vendors, see it in a positive way and recognize the importance and then want to partner with us. So we end up getting brands and customers that we wouldn't be able to get.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense, Ankit, especially around attracting manufacturers that want to work with you. I mean, again, a smaller entity, there's a lot of other people with a lot of deeper pockets out there. And why would they come work with Kitply? Why would they either come support you or customers come look at you as a resource? And I think all of these things that you're doing, as you said, it's punching above your weight belt. This is something big. I mean, this is a great method. I mean, I love some of this stuff. And frankly, you've been doing a lot of this type of alternative marketing for a very long time. I mean, since I've known you, I mean, you've done things a little bit differently than the standard building materials distributor out there.
Yeah, and this marketing piece is only one piece of it. Everything from doing huddles in our office, that all company huddles twice a week, and all company meetings on Mondays. And I think from a cultural piece, living by core values and purpose and all of that, really run like a tech or a marketing company, even though we're a wood products distribution company.
And I tell this story a lot about the ziplining challenge. Remember years ago, that if you all got to a certain GP, that everybody was going to go ziplining on Grouse Mountain. And there's those pictures of you all ziplining in Grouse Mountain. I mean, it was this camaraderie event. Everybody's coming together for this single purpose.
Yeah. And it wasn't just the salespeople, it's from purchasing to sales to operations to a warehouse to inside sales to accounting and finance. So it really gets everyone aligned on the same vein and everyone's seen as an equal. One of our core values is no one is pigeonholed. So some of our outside salespeople are warehouse people. Some of our inside salespeople are outside salespeople. Some of our AR people were counter sales representatives. Because everyone moves around and wants to move around and has the ability to move around, understanding the other person's perspective is really good.
Oh, I would agree. That's also attractive for newer people coming into your organization is that they're not pigeonholed into one area. This is something that younger people, I mean, basically people of your age tend to like to have opportunities, lots of different opportunities to try different things. And I think that that's something that maybe older employers, perhaps like my age and more, don't really understand that. We think, no, you go here, then you go here, then you go here. And I think that's not the mindset of this younger generation that we're trying to attract.
Yeah, I mean, millennials for sure, for all the flack they get, I think there's some value in doing some of this work for them because for them, purpose and meaning and engagement are more important than just a paycheck every 2 weeks. So some of this stuff plays into that. And we don't do it just for that purpose. I'm a millennial. So for me, it really is who I am and how I believe in how companies should be led and lived. So we're a purpose-driven company and live with core values. And those things attract the kind of people that thrive in that environment. And, millennials, whether you love them or you love to hate them, they're here and they're growing part of that workforce. And so we have to continue to find a way to integrate them. And I think if you do the right things, they actually can be more productive than what a lot of people realize, or sometimes, with the new technologies can be more productive than the previous generations.
No, absolutely correct. I teach this all the time. Everybody wants to bash on the millennials, for this and that. And I'm like, guys, I'm telling you two things here. One, they're going to be paying for your retirement. And two, you're the one who raised them. So let's keep that really honest here, about what we need to do with that group.
I like that, actually. I've never heard that before. It's good.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's so funny. People complain about it. And I'm like, well, okay, well, who raised them? And then it's like, oh, okay, well, maybe we made a mistake here and there. But no, I'm actually, I'm one of those people that is very excited for this generation. I really enjoy listening and understanding that there is a different convention of working than what I was raised in, or maybe the generation ahead of me was raised in as well. So. One thing I wanted to ask you about, and this is something that I've seen throughout your career so far, is the continuing education, your enjoyment of going to schools and getting involved. I mean, London Business School, MIT Endicott, all these different things. Tell me about why you continually go back to school. I mean, you're educated. What's going on? Why do you go back?
Well, one of our core values at the company is Kaizen, and it's also one of my core values. So Kaizen is a Japanese word for continuous improvement. So we're always looking to improve ourselves. So for one, that's just the living of one of our core values, an important core value. Everyone's always improving a little bit. So we're a little bit better today than we were yesterday. The other piece is, even though I'm the leader of the organization, if my team isn't growing and developing and able to do more things and more productively, then we're going to stagnate as a company. And for me to be able to help them grow, I have to grow to keep up with them. So I have to invest in all of that. And frankly, I do enjoy some of that continuous learning work. And I do come back with a lot of new knowledge that I end up applying in my business that allows us to grow, that allows us to run more efficiently and effectively. And every time I've implemented something new, sometimes my staff does get concerned about like, oh, here he is coming back from a conference. He's going to
Totally.
he's going to try and do things differently. But I feel confident with my team's ability to sometimes filter through some of the essentials and the non-essentials, and they'll run with what they think is the best. And so I'll bring in a ton, and then, a pound will get applied, which is okay with me because that pound would have not come had I not got that ton of materials to apply. So it's been a significant part of our company. And we do Mondays lunch and learn. The entire company sits down together on Monday at lunch, and we all sit down and learn together, whether it's products or industry. So we have two pieces of it. We usually watch a TED Talk, or we have a speaker come in that does a talk. And then we do a product training or industry training together as a team. And we eat together. So we break bread together. So it's some camaraderie happening in that room.
Oh, that's fantastic. I have another client who they'll bring in abstracts, like a Cliff Notes version of a business book. And he'll talk about it with his leadership team and do something very similar to that. But getting other people in your business excited about continuous education, that's a great deal. Sometimes people aren't always willing to step out and look at these opportunities. But I think adding that in there, that's going to always attract new people to your organization.
Yeah. Well, I think it begins with attracting the right people. So we already are filtering at the time of recruitment and hiring. So these people are inherently looking for this. So it's a combination.
So speaking of that, recruiting, this has been one of the biggest challenges for anybody out there, recruiting, hiring, that whole thing. Is there anything that's worked well for you? To attract the right talent to your organization?
Yeah, again, I don't want to beat the same drum again and again, but having that core value and purpose piece as clear as possible. So you hear this from other companies and people as well, is we hire slow and we fire fast. So I'm a strong believer in that myself, but because we're so good at hiring that we almost rarely ever have to fire somebody. One of the things we do well is we do the core value assessment. We assess people on whether or not they live our core values. Then we also do a personality and behavioral assessment as well. So that's an understanding of what that person's natural abilities are like and what they're good at. And so we're very particular about what we're looking for. We create scorecards in advance of what that position is going to be responsible for. So if we're hiring a salesperson, what are their targets going to be? What are their requirements for reporting going to be? What kind of new products are they going to be getting, or new customers? Easy to do for a salesperson, sometimes harder to do for a warehouse guy or a AR person, but we have those scorecards created and we show them in advance to the candidates, and the right people will love all of that and the wrong people will just get shied away from it with all of that attention. So I think that hiring is a function of finding enough of a talent pool to begin with that wants to work for you. So, that's where some of my soft marketing efforts that come into play, getting recently recognized as a wood industry top 40 under 40, that I'm going to receive the award in July in Las Vegas, things like those. So if there's already any talented people in the woodworking industry, they're thinking, where do we want to work? So I think it's having a bigger funnel on top. It really is like sales, and then slowly narrowing it down to the bullseye of exactly the person that you're looking for.
Nice. I think that's great. And I've loved watching these 40 under 40 things. And, I hate to tell you, man, eventually you're not going to be under 40 anymore, so you're not going to be able to get into these awards, but take advantage of it while you can.
They may have a top 80 under 80 by then. So I'll
there you go. You gotta shoot for those down the line. Obviously, you've gotten involved with groups like that and you've marketed yourself like that, but you've also been involved with other organizations like Entrepreneurs Organization. That's been, I think, a big part of your career. Could you share a little bit about your involvement with that association?
Yeah, I've been a member for close to 5 years now. I joined when I saw the need to network with other entrepreneurs that are going through some of the challenges that I was. And I was one of the really young members in the group. The average age is just over 40, and I was not even 30 at the time that I joined. So for me, there was just a wealth of knowledge from these people that have been in business for a long time that I just kept soaking it in. And for a while, I soaked a lot of that knowledge. I also volunteered on their boards for both local chapter and across regional Canadian national boards as well. So I got to meet and network with the entrepreneurs from across the the world in different industries and sometimes in my industry as well. And sometimes I've got like direct connections to a customer that I can relate to, say, I got that customer because I was in the entrepreneurs organization. But a lot of times it's been indirect ideas and support from other entrepreneurs going through the same issues that I am, and being able to discuss that with a group of 8 or 9 people every month or every second month in a forum-like environment where you can share openly without fear of judgment or being criticized, which sometimes is hard because we don't always have that trusted network outside of that in our lives. And for me, especially as a young immigrant entrepreneur, I didn't have any role models or people in my life that I could reach out for that. So for me, it's been fantastic. And even people who do have sometimes those connections, they find the learning in EO is also fantastic. Some of my best learning has come from speakers that I've met in EO.
I'm just such a huge fan of organizations like that. I mean, I can't say enough about them. And really, any client I work with, I'll throw that out as a possibility. Take a look at these other organizations because you really can share what's going on in your organization. And chances are somebody has had a similar experience and they can offer that advice as a possibility out there. So tell me, if you could, you're going back to the very beginning. What advice would you give that young entrepreneur that's wanting to start their own business? I mean, they're wanting to go forward and do this.
Yeah, for sure. As I look back on my journey of entrepreneurship, close to 10 years now, I would say the first thing is know that you're going to fail and you're going to fail hard. So be prepared for that failure. It's not if, it's when it's going to happen. So if you're not ready for it, you're going to hurt. The definition of failure will keep changing over time. First few failures will be financials, and maybe they will be later financial still, or they may be related to people or lots of other things that will come up. So be prepared to fail. Be prepared for it to take longer. I know there's all these unicorn stories we hear about people who start a company and a year and a half later, they've sold it for $1 billion or whatnot. Great stories, fantastic. Hopefully it'll happen to you, but don't plan for it. It'll take longer than you ever imagine it will. And even for those 1.5-year stories that we hear about people becoming billionaires, I think there's a long story in behind that people don't always realize that has been there for a long time. An overnight success it's a long time in the making. So know that it's going to take a lot longer. And the third is belief and persistence in your idea and your business and in yourself. So never give up, that attitude of, I know where I'm going and I may not know exactly how to get there, but I will get there. So that persistence is really important.
Good. I appreciate that. I saw a quote of something you said to an interviewer a few years back that you needed to burn bridges to go forward. You need to not have that fallback position.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people I'll do this on the side to see if it's going and then I'll jump into it. Or others will say, maybe I'll do like 3 or 4 of them part-time and then see which one takes off. That's not what's worked for me. For me was, I quit my job cold turkey and I said, this is what I'm going to do. And that's it. And so at that point, I had no choice but to make that successful. So I burnt all my previous bridges so not my relationships, but bridges in the sense that I had no other source of income. So I had to find a way to make this work. And that burning desire that came from burning those bridges, that helped me stay focused every day when I woke up and not know how I'm going to feed myself or my kids or my family, that, just made me make the right decisions and allowed me to work hard and be persistent.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, before I let you go, what's next? Is there anything on the horizon? Where are you going next here?
Yeah, so where I'm at right now is I'm looking at scaling up my business geographically. There are a lot of companies in our industry. We're one of the few that are actually owned by young people. In general, most are owned by older people who are looking to retire. And my goal is to find these people that sometimes don't realize that they could sell it to somebody for some money. A lot of times they'll end up closing it because they don't have any succession plans in place, or they go out of business because they take their eyes off the ball and now they're going out of business. So I'm hoping that I can be part of that wealth transfer for these people who have got these businesses that they would like to transfer. So I'm looking at Toronto right now and possibly other locations as well that I can acquire and replicate what we have in BC in other parts of Canada and hopefully in the States at some point.
Yeah. Well, Air Canada has 5 flights a day going right across from Vancouver over to Toronto. So yeah, easy to get there. Well, my friend, hey, it's always great catching up with you and I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Absolute pleasure as well. And good luck to you. I'm really excited for what you're doing, Jason. And I've looked up to for everything you've always done. And you've been a great coach and consultant for us in the past. And I'm excited for this new journey for you as well.
Thanks, my friend. Take care. Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, consider hitting that subscribe button. Links to sponsors, products, and services mentioned during this episode can be found in the show description area on your podcast application or at www.distributiontalk.com. Distribution Talk is edited and mixed by Andrea Klunder and Edwin Ruiz at the Creative Imposter Studios. This episode was brought to you by my company, The Distribution Team. We are a consulting services firm dedicated to helping wholesale distribution clients remove barriers to profitability, generate wealth, and achieve personal goals. To learn more about how we can help your company succeed, check us out at www.thedistributionteam.com.